ready for this? It's showtime. Lights, fans, action. Oh yeah, we've got action. Faster, tougher, more ferocious. There's nothing like league. This is the Betfred Super League.
Got me here. It took a big chunk out. It's bleeding. It's bleeding. Oh no, it's bleeding. The thing just ripped my ear off. What do you think?
Hello again, everyone. Welcome to this week's edition of Eddie and Stevo, the podcast, supported, as always, by Rugby League's major sponsors, Betfred. Now, believe me, we've a stack to get through this week. Another coach sacking, a momentous weekend in the Betfred Super League, and the small matter of the state of origin decider in Australia. So let's make a start on our weekly Rugby League chat right away. And let's get underway, Stevo, with the shock news that another coaching career has hit the Buffers, because following on from Steve McNamara's departure at the Cattle and Dragons last month, Castleford Tigers announced on Monday coach Danny Maguire has been sacked and replaced by Director of Rugby Chris Chester on an interim basis. Now, Maguire's said to be upset and shocked by the news. No wonder. He was only appointed 9 months ago, for goodness sake.
I just cannot believe what they're doing there. Look, they've had their ups and downs. We understand that. But I just had a little bit of a thought, when they brought Chester on board. Was he going to be there to help? Or was he one of the reasons perhaps where they weren't too happy with Maguire? At least we don't have relegation anymore. So therefore, give a coach at least one season to see if he can turn it around. To me, it sounds like panic. But I raised the eyebrows when they brought Chester on board. I'm not saying that is the reason behind it, but obviously the people that pay the wages, they're not happy with Maguire and the results. And we'll just have to wait and see whether Chester has got that golden, shall we say, little wand to turn it around.
The club chairman, Martin Jepson, said, "It's been a challenging season, but the result and the performance against Huddersfield last weekend was particularly disappointing. Tigers are now 10th in the league. He and the board felt a different direction was needed." But the fact of the matter is, this season, Danny Maguire has had 5 months in charge. He's one of the game's great players. Seems to count for nothing, though, Steve, or that.
Well, it does. It's a matter of saying, are the fans chanting, get rid of him, blah, blah, blah. It was only a couple of weeks ago. They were playing really, really good rugby league. I mean, they should have beaten Wigan. And that was a controversial sort of situation, wasn't it? Mm. But there again, give him time. And if you panic, it's not good for the team. The team morale, it must be so low. And it's a difficult job. It's something that it's fraught with danger when you say to someone, right, I'm going to be the new coach. Will the players react to it? Do they react to the coach that's leaving? It can have a negative effect, but obviously they feel that bringing Chester in will have a positive effect. We'll just have to wait and see.
We will. He takes over immediately and he'll be in charge this weekend. Now, obviously, we've got the state of origin to look back on in Australia in a few moments' time. We'll do that shortly. But first, Stevo, have you ever remembered a weekend like we just had in the Super League? The top two are beaten. The race is hotting up for those playoff places, isn't it?
Yeah, it certainly is. And, of course, Michael Lewis had injury assessment in the first half, which he failed. So Rovers had to cope for almost an hour without him. But it's that sort of situation whereby you should be able to collectively make sure that if one of your star players is out, then you can all sort of play hard and well. I'm taking nothing away from the fact that they were beaten in the end. And it just shows you that when it gets to the pressure, everybody thought Rovers, tabletop, no one will touch them, blah, blah, blah. And then when Wigan lost, oh, wow.
I know, incredible. You know, we've said all year Wigan looked like the only side able to catch Rovers at the top. They have looked a bit wobbly recently. They struggled past Castleford, as you just mentioned, beaten at Wakefield, making hard work of it at Huddersfield. Bevan French out for another 6 or 7 weeks, Stevo. But by the way, mark down August the 15th on your calendar. Wigan face Hull KR that day at Wigan. I wonder if it's all going to change in the next few weeks.
Well, sometimes it does. You know, you lose one star player, and it gives some indication as how much a star player can be that when you miss them. And, you know, the injuries situation at Wigan won't help. And it certainly doesn't help anybody to think it. But I was like you, Eddie. I thought to myself, well, I don't think that Hulkington Rovers will be caught and prevent them in picking up the league leaders trophy. I thought they were just home and hose. Obviously, things are getting a bit nervous.
Indeed so. And Lee now are fourth in the table, right back in the mix for a top 3 finish.
And don't forget Leeds, Eddie.
Yeah, Leeds are battling away as well. They really have come good, haven't they, after that result of the weekend? But hey, what a match this weekend! Lee against Hulkingston Rovers at the Lee Sports Village. Now, if the Leopards get over the top of Rovers, everyone will sit up and take notice, won't they? And it's not beyond the bounds of possibility.
Well, they have to. It's to be playing on home soil. That's really a good, shall we say, positive. I saw the game. The Rovers, they bombed so many tries.
Oh, three in the first few minutes with those forward passes.
Forward passes. Now, I'm not blaming referees or touch judges or whatever, but
they were spot on. They were spot on, Stevo.
No, I realise that, but what I'm saying is sometimes a forward pass is often overlooked by the officials. You know, you can just get that lucky break, but to be brought back for 3, they should have controlled that game. It's as simple as that. And they know it and they realise it. But without Mikey Lewis, it's not going to be easy for them.
No, Danny Richardson is coming back from his loan spell at Salford for this weekend. They've recalled him. So it's a big chance for him as well. But that's going to be a hell of a game. I tell you what, Lee and Hulkingston Rovers this weekend, fantastic game, that.
Yeah. Well, it should be a full house.
Should, and it will be probably. Lee are going so well in that department. You know, they're coming in droves.
They've got the PR system working really, really well at Lee. And, a lot of people thought, the Leopards, what's all this about, this and the other. But it just shows you that they've used it as a great advantage. And they've played well.
Well, Leeds are now third. They're just a couple of points behind Wigan. They're right in the mix, as you said. How important is it, Stevo, that Brad Arthur stays at Headingley? The coach dodged the question again at the weekend. It's being constantly asked after the match. He said a decision will be made soon. Ian Blease, the Leeds sporting director, rates the chances of him staying as better than 50-50. But the club, the Super League, the Rhinos, they need certainty, don't they?
And very, very quickly, look, it's been well documented that Brad Arthur wants to go back to Australia. He's made it quite clear. And, of course, there's a lot of rumours going around now. Down under, Des Hasler, the Titans coach, has more or less said that he's retiring. He's in his 60s, is Des Hasler. But the reason why he's probably retiring before he gets the sack is that in his contract is that if they finished out of the playoff situation down under, then he will be sacked. So I think Des Hasler, who's a pretty switched-on guy, I can assure you of that, seems to have announced, hasn't made it confirmed yet, but the buzz is that Des Hasler will say, I'm retiring now, get yourself a new coach. New coach? Brad Arthur?
Maybe. He's got another huge game this weekend. Leeds at home to St. Helens, who made it 4 wins in a row against Hull on Saturday. Hull can't win at home. They lost every game on their own ground this year. Remarkable. But Leeds, as we said, are banging on the door.
Look, Brad Arthur has given them, shall we say, a lot of freedom to play really, really solid rugby league. They've got the defence organised, and there's quite a few players have got the experience, and they could well be coming down the inside of the rails to make it to the grand final. It wouldn't surprise me.
No, it's a great game for them this weekend at home to St. Helens. I mentioned Lee and Hull KR. Leeds and Saints just as big, absolutely massive this weekend for those two.
Yeah, well, the opportunity, the two favourites lost, and it gives them the incentive. And how many times, especially, never write off the Saints?
Who said that? Who said that?
You used to bore me so often, never write off the Saints. The trouble is, Eddie, that you were spot on. It wasn't as though you were just making it up, because they were in the prime. The Saints, a few years back, they were very difficult to stop.
And they've got the likes of Harry Robertson now celebrating his England call-up. Morgan Knowles in his last season, fantastic last weekend. It's mouth-watering at the moment. It really is. And making up the six right now, Stevo, talking about mouth-watering, Wakefield, arguably, with Hull KR, the success story of 2025. Newly promoted, they blew Catalan Dragons away 44-6, ending a 14-match losing run against the Dragons. Wakefield are on a roll. They posted their best crowd in 12 years on Saturday. New owner Matt Ellis, remarkable job is done in rebuilding one of the oldest clubs in the game. And Darryl Powell, the coach, believes they can make the top six.
I wouldn't back against it, that's for sure. And of course, they've got the guy from Manly, haven't they? Jas Devaga.
Yeah.
That's Samoan international. And look, sometimes you have to bring over an overseas player to make a statement of a signing for the club. But what worries me, Eddie, they're changing the amount of, shall we say, Australian imports or overseas imports. Yes. Why on earth are we doing that?
Well, what you're talking about is the moment they're allowed 7, it's going to increase to 10 overseas players allowed for Super League clubs. That apparently has been approved, and the take-up by clubs of the new rule will be monitored by the RFL. A total removal of the rule to limit overseas players' numbers could, they say, be to the detriment of homegrown players, and ultimately the national team. But surely going up to 10, it's not much of a help to homegrown players anyway, is it?
Well, that means that 3 players can't get that opportunity because you've got overseas players. Look, we've seen it happen so many times. And how many we got the situation, remember years ago, Halifax. I think Halifax at one point had, 10 or 11 actually playing a game, and not one of them was English.
Yes.
That was way back in the day when Halifax were winning everything. They got Graham Eady and all that sort of thing. And that did nothing, as far as I was concerned, in developing junior development in the Halifax area. In fact, it prevented young kids having a chance to play for their local team. I don't know what's happening but I keep saying it week in, week out. Who on earth is running our game in this country?
It's a good question. And if you go back even further, remember Hull in their glory days in the 80s? They had a stack of Kiwis, didn't they?
Yep.
Lulawai, Gary Kemble, the list is endless. Warrington as well, under Darryl van der Velde, they had a stack of Kiwis playing at Wilderspool. And yet Hull, despite their problems in not winning at home, and Warrington, they are two sides closest to breaking in to the top six. Warrington, though, will have to play better than they did at Salford, who were really up for the challenge. But a win's a win, isn't it? A win's a win. And they travel, Warrington, to Catalan this weekend. Is this make or break for Sam Burgess, Stevo?
I think you'd have to say that it's make or break whether Warrington can mix it in the playoffs. They've got to really get their act together. 1 week they can, and then next week they can't. It's their defence, Eddie. They've got great players that can attack and create tries, but it's their defence at times that just lets them down.
It does at times, you're right. Well, it'll be interesting to see what happens in the south of France. Thunderstorms and torrential rain, allegedly, are forecast for Perpignan this weekend. I hope the game goes ahead, because I know a lot of people from this part of the world are travelling down again to Perpignan. So let's keep our fingers crossed for that. Look, we'll come back to Super League in a moment, but I know that you are very keen to talk about the State of Origin decider that was played in Sydney this week. And I know that you are an adopted Blue, you're an adopted New South Welshman, but your team,
I'm not now, Eddie.
You've changed colours already. They were beaten, weren't they? Hammered in the decider in Sydney, 24-12. Queenslanders have taken out the series this year.
Yeah, and listen, 20-0 at half time. It was over. It was as simple as that. All you had to look at in that first half, that the Queensland's outfit were the only ones that were, shall we say, being adventurous, keeping the ball alive, etc. and so forth. What on earth New South Wales was thinking. The two halfbacks, they were completely outplayed. Most of the team was outplayed in every department, but the two halfbacks, Jerome Luau and Nathan Cleary, a very poor showing. To me, I didn't think Nathan Cleary was anywhere near fully fit. He looked as though he was troubled. He couldn't get, very rare we saw him take a couple of bit of a step here, there and everywhere. And that's the gamble that you take in putting someone in that, I'm not saying that he was injured, but he played like he was injured. And it was an emotional game. I mean, the captain, Cameron Munster, he lost his father this week, and he said he wanted to play in the memory of his father, and I thought that was absolutely wonderful. But the way that Munster and Tom Dearden, now you've got to take it back after the first one. Remember, New South Wales won the first State of Origin, and Cherry Evans had a nightmare, and Billy Slater took a lot of shall we say, criticism in regards to dropping one of the all-time greats, and to bring in Tom Dearden. Well, Tom Dearden has been outstanding. Not only did he win the medal for the man of the match on the third one, he also won the Wally Lewis for the man of the series. Tom Dearden, both in attack and especially in defence, he was outrageously good. One of the best displays I've seen from a halfback. Probably after watching Nathan Cleary. Remember when he brought Penrith back in with 10 minutes to go? One of the most wonderful stepping tries underneath the post. But ironically, he was trying to play against Tom Dearden, who completely outplayed him and fully deserved both the awards. And, 20-0 at half time. It was over.
It was. And they had 100% completion rate in the first half, did the Maroons. They were error-free completely. OK, New South Wales were better in the second half, but Queensland silenced the huge crowd, 82,000 completely. And poor old Nathan Cleary, he couldn't get them back into it. Look, Stevo, it's 45 years now, exactly, since the very first State of Origin series, 8th of July, 1980. I watched the build-up on Aussie TV to this. It was like they were previewing a World Cup final, never mind a State of Origin decider. It's obviously the biggest occasion in the Southern Hemisphere for rugby league. You know, if I had been behind the microphone, we'd have been all over looking ahead to the upcoming Ashes. It never got a mention, not one mention.
Yeah, it was surprising, but what you've got to do, I can remember that game because I was working for the national channel, Australian broadcasting, and we broadcast that first game, and you just got that feeling, this is going to be big. This is not just going to be like in the olden days. Now, just to put everybody straight, in the olden days, if you're a Queenslander but playing down in New South Wales, you could be selected for New South Wales. In fact, Artie Beetson played for New South Wales quite a few times in what was the old New South Wales versus Queensland. They then changed it to the Origin, State of Origin. You have had to play your junior development rugby league in Queensland to be selected, and the same applied with New South Wales. And it has just grown and grown and grown. And the biggest problem that we're having to face now is that it's over 20 years since we had an Ashes series. So that means the generation of young children who are watching international rugby league, England versus Australia or Great Britain versus Australia, that was their main aim. I want to play for Australia. You ask a young kid today down under, I want to play State of Origin. And that is why I'm pleased that the NRL, have decided or want to help out in this country and take over running the game itself. They've got the money behind them. We don't. Simple as that. And the sooner that we get to negotiating table to say, yes, this is it. Because the return of the Ashes should be the return of great rugby league football between the two nations.
Well, it's the pinnacle, isn't it? It is the pinnacle as far as you are concerned, I know, to play for your country and take on the Aussies. I've got a question for you. Can all the 34 players who took to the field of play in State of Origin 3 this week, can they all play for Australia? Because if they can, England face an enormous challenge.
Of course they do. I mean, you know, the 32-man squad now really has got nothing to do with it, because when the build-up to the grand final, you get maybe 4 or 5 different players who are at their best. And look, Sean Wayne knows exactly the type of person that you need in that squad. He understands what is needed. He knows that the Ashes series, the Aussies will be odds-on favourites because they've got so many players to select from. And that's the reason why Sean Wayne has brought out the 32-man squad now. But that doesn't mean to say that they will be there when it comes to the crunch time. It's meaningless now, but at least it's giving some of the players who have never played at international level, it's given them the opportunity. But not only those, Eddie, that is selected, but it gives other people a chance. You may have a great run-in right the way through to the grand final, an unknown come out of nowhere, and he will be selected, because you've got to select players in top form, not in past issues, not what they did 2, 3, 4 years ago. They've got to be at the peak performance.
Well, that's interesting, because Sam Tompkins, who is the England manager apparently, assisting Sean Wayne for the Ashes, said on Sky at the weekend that basically this 32-man squad that he was named was pretty meaningless. Sean was asked to name the squad, but Tompkins said he didn't really want to so far ahead of the series, late October and November. And of course, the question was asked, the elephant in the room is Jake Connor, leader of the Man of Steel race. Sky pundit John Wilkins said Connor wouldn't make the squad because basically Sean Wayne doesn't like him.
I think that's a bit harsh in regards to the fact that you never cut off anybody's chance. He's playing outstanding rugby league football, is Jake Connor, and that's the reason why he's leading the Man of Steel race.
Yeah, but that's only other people's opinion, Stevo, isn't it? Sean Wayne says he doesn't know how the Man of Steel is judged, and he's keeping a close eye on Connor.
I understand that. And Sean Wayne won't be interested. Whoever wins, whoever wins the Man of Steel award, he's only interested in getting the great players. I think I touched on it last week, Eddie, in as much that, there are certain players that at times just let themselves down. He's playing outstanding rugby league football, is Jake Connor. But there are times when they come up with a silly high tackle, or he'll argue to a referee while the game is still playing. These are little things that Shane Warne would have looked at and said, I need someone that's concentrating for 100%.
Well, Connor was absolutely fantastic against Hull Kingston Rovers in the win, and the man himself was in the TV studio after the match. All these points were put to him, and Connor himself, he looked a little bit uncomfortable. It wasn't good viewing. He remained tight-lipped about England, saying his main focus was getting the job done for Leeds, continuing to improve and be consistent for the rest of the season. If he wins the Man of Steel, Stevo, that means he has been consistent. He's got to play, hasn't he? He's got to play.
Well, it depends on the association that he probably already has had with Sean Wayne. Look, Sean Wayne is a very thorough coach, and it's not just about sending a letter out or an email saying you're under observation, you're in with a chance of blah, blah, blah. And that's probably why Sean has brought out the 32-man squad, which, as you say, Tompkins says he didn't want to do that. But it gives the opportunity for someone to say, right, I've got to improve or whatever. And who knows? All this publicity about Jake Connor, maybe that's a kick up the backside or the help that sometimes players need. Now, I said last week that in the olden days, there were certain players who would not be selected for Great Britain or England, inasmuch because they used to lose their temper. And when you go into an Ashes series or a World Cup series, there's nothing worse than someone being riled. And maybe Sean Wayne is thinking, well, Connor's the type of bloke that can be riled. I know sometimes, it just loses the intensity that you need to be a top player. And he's at the top now. He's playing outstanding rugby league football. But we've a long way to go before the end of the season. And maybe Sean, we don't know. I assume that Sean Wayne would have pulled him to one side and just said, right, if you get your act together, blah, 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 then you've got an opportunity. But it was very, very clear to me that Sean said, look, these are the 32-man squad, but it's pretty meaningless. And it is.
Yeah, at this stage of the season, it probably is. There's a lot more rugby league to be played for over the next 3 or 4 months. We're running out of time, Stevo, but I want to bring you back down to the earth now. The Rugby Football League's compliance department has recommended that poor old Salford receive the biggest ever points deduction in Super League history for fielding that weakened side in round 1 against St Helens, which St Helens won by 82 points to 0, the widest ever margin of victory in the Super League. An 8-point deduction and a 5-figure fine is apparently being recommended. I mean, talk about kicking a club when it's down, and why? For goodness sake, it's done and dusted. Why? Is it because they believe they've brought the game into disrepute, or what?
Well, the people that are coming out with this and saying this is what you're going to be fined and this is blah, 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 they probably think, well, we've done something. And no one can accuse us by just saying we just brushed it under the carpet. Eddie, everybody knew that Salford was in dire straits before the season kicked off. Wasn't that the time to shove it under the carpet? No, it wasn't. It should have been brought out. They should not have been allowed to play. It's not right. It's not right to the fans who have paid money to get in and watch their team just get hammered virtually week in, week out. Now, I've heard sums or thousands, hundreds of thousands owed to the taxation.
Yeah.
So will they bother about whatever they're going to get fined? They'll say, well, just add that to what we owe to the inland revenue. They won't be able to pay, Teddy.
No.
So
No.
The only thing they can do is, oh, we'll fine them again. And it gives the impression that we're doing something. They should have done it months ago.
Well, I tell you where you want to be this weekend, either at the Lee Sports Village or at Headingley for those two fantastic matches on paper that will have a massive bearing on the top of the table. And I'll tell you what, next week we'll be talking about those, I hope, and not about the problems and trials and tribulations of poor old Salford. No promotion, relegation. You just have to say, why on earth are we going down that path? Stevo, it's great to talk to you, as always. We've covered some ground tonight, haven't we? We really have.
I tell you what, Eddie, I need a drink.
Yeah, well, I bet you do. And I need to go and have a lie down in a darkened room. Always good. Always good to talk to you. And we'll see you again in 7 days' time.
Take care, top man.